The featured company is a paid client of Proactive Group Holdings, and this recording is disseminated by Proactive on its behalf.
We've already established 4 kilometers of strike length. And, just to kind of put all of that in context, the target we're working on is a geochem anomaly, so copper in soil anomaly that runs for 20 kilometers.
Welcome back inside our Proactive newsroom, and joining me now is Adrian O'Brien. He is Vice President for midnightsunminingcorp. And Adrian, it's great to see you again. How are you?
Yeah, good to see you, Steve. It's been too long. Doing really well. Super
Good.
exciting times for Midnight Sun, so we have lots to catch up on.
Yeah, I know you've been traveling a lot and talking about the project because a lot of things are going on. There's a lot of work happening right now. Let's remind everyone a little bit of the project itself and the work to this date.
For sure. So we're in the most exciting phase now. This is we have a discovery. We're in the resource delineation phase, working on something super exciting. So we've got a discovery at Dumbwa, which of course was the target you and I have been talking about for 2 or 3 years. We made a discovery in August. We drilled our first discovery hole. And now we're 166 holes into the program. We've stayed on the system the whole time. We've only managed to get about 29 holes of assays out to the market. But hopefully we can break that logjam pretty quick, catch up on the other holes that are pending. But it has been incredible. This thing is taking shape. We've already established 4 kilometers of strike length. And, just to kind of put all of that in context, the target we're working on is a geochem anomaly, so copper in soil anomaly that runs for 20 kilometers. Almost unprecedented in Zambia. It's one of the largest and highest grade ever found. So we started drilling at the south border, and we've got a model. We started working our way up, and that model has held together. Now we've got 4 kilometers of strike, and we intend to finish the first 12 kilometers, so the first half of this giant anomaly, by about Q3. So
Okay.
we're going to know. And our target there is about 1 billion to 1.5 billion tons. So this is big.
Yeah. Is it on one specific area of the project? Are you looking at some other areas as well in conjunction with this? Sort of talk to me a bit about the drilling and the spacing of it.
Yeah, so the drilling is all along one area. So this target itself is in the southeast corner of our property. It's in the basement dome. So this is in the domes region of Zambia. It's an area that's prolific and famous for having giant deposits that are right at surface. And the sort of flagship operation that this is a geological analog to is Barrick's Lumwana mine, which is right next door to us. Now, Lumwana is 1.6 billion tons. That was advanced by a fellow named Kevin Bonnell. Kevin Bonnell is our COO, and that's who's advancing our target as well. So the same guy that unlocked that big deposit for Barrick identified the target we had at Dumbwa, has put a plan in place, built a model, hit the ground running, and got the discovery right away. So he's doing it all over again, if you will. And this time we're the benefactors. So pretty exciting times.
Yeah. So obviously you mentioned you got about 29 holes that have been released, but there's a lot more that are sitting in the labs. The labs, as I've heard from many people, are a bit backed up right now. So you're waiting on those.
Yeah.
So what's the work plan for this year? Is it just to continue drilling all year? Or explain to us what you plan to do this year.
Yeah. So we're taking a little different approach than a lot of companies would. Typically with juniors, you see companies come in and they do a lot of these big step outs, 1 kilometer, half a kilometer, 2 kilometers. And then they like to arm wave and say, hey, we hit here, we hit it 2 kilometers away, and we hit 2 kilometers past that. Therefore, it's 4 kilometers long. We're not doing that. We're drilling this the way a major would. So we're actually drilling 50-meter spacing across the entire deposit and 100 to 200-meter line spacing from south to north along the entire 20 kilometers. So that puts us on a track where we're drilling about 10,000 meters a month right now. We have 5 drill rigs turning. Budget of about $20 million to the end of the year, but we're well funded with 35 million in the bank. And our goal is to get to that first half, that first 12 kilometers by Q3. So call it late July, mid-August, somewhere in there, and be able to talk about the real size and scale. And our target just for that first 12 kilometers is 1 billion to 1.5 billion tons. So it's pretty extraordinary.
Adrian, are you guys working towards reports as well? Is that something later in the year and into next year that we should be on the horizon?
Yeah, I mean, that'll put us in a position to publish an initial MRE on Dumbwa on that first half. And then, we'll make strategic decisions around that once we get to that point. I think once we hit the 12-kilometer mark and we've drilled, at that point, it's a lot of drilling. I mean, Steve, we're 34,000 meters of drilling into this, and we still have another 50,000 or so to go. So at that point, we might hit pause, breathe for a second, decide on whether we just start straight into the northern drilling, which is another 10 kilometers. We have some targets to the west that we want to look at. that were developed. And so, we got a lot of work to do, but it's certainly going to put us in a position where we've already got something very big to talk about.
And I want to ask you about one other thing, and that is you may be the beneficiary of geopolitics at play between the U.S. and China. Can you sort of enlighten me about this rail line story about one on one side and one on the other, and what this all means? But really, the beneficiary could be your company.
Yeah, 100%. To be in the position we are. So, as you and I've discussed this in the past, and as I've made really clear in all of my presentations over the last year or two, there is a perfect storm for M&A brewing in Zambia right now. So you have some of the largest deposits in the world, and this is the only area that breeds billion-ton copper deposits as an average. But taking that a step further, these deposits are all at surface. They're a special type of deposits called sulfide hosted or strata-bound, sediment-hosted deposits, or basement dome-hosted in the case of Dumbwa or Lumwana or Kamoa-Kakula. Now, when you look at those deposits, what does the world need right now? The world needs an incredibly large amount of copper. I heard Friedland recently say they need a new 10 million ton contained copper deposit found every year for the next 25 years to make an impact on the global deficit. That is a mind-blowing number. And whether it's accurate or not, the point holds true that we need an immense amount of copper. And there's very few spots in the world that can actually supply it. So when you look at this area we're working, it's one of the few areas that could actually have a global impact. And so, you've got First Quantum working there with Kansanshi, which is right beside us, their flagship operation, and Lumwana right beside us, which is Barrick. But in that camp, you also have Ivanhoe with 8,000 square kilometers of, grassroots property looking for a discovery. Rio Tinto, BHP, Glencore, Freeport-McMoRan, Anglo American, all those companies are there. All of them are looking for a brand new, billion-ton plus deposit. And if a company could put one on a silver platter and drop it right in the middle of the camp, that is exactly what everyone's looking for. And so I say a perfect storm for M&A. Now, let's take it a step further. The US government has announced that the State Department is funding a rail line called the Lobito Corridor, which extends from a western port in Angola all the way across Angola and through Zambia to connect the four most important properties to a western port in Angola to get copper out to the US. And what are those four projects? Sentinel, Lumwana, Kansanshi, and of course, Midnight Sun sandwiched right in the middle. As a response to that, the Chinese government announced another rail line connecting to the exact same point in eastern Zambia, going east through Tanzania to an eastern port to get that same copper out to China. That's a $1.4 billion project. And what does that mean for Midnight Sun? It means two things. Number one, we are at the center of a geopolitical tug of war between the US and China over critical metal supplies. Trump just announced last week through the New York Times that he was considering cutting off AIDS funding to Zambia unless Zambia would guarantee him access to these critical copper and critical metal supplies. You have a literal geopolitical tug of war between China and the US over these supplies. And that means more majors are going to come in from China. It means more companies are going to be interested. And what it really means is, Midnight Sun's in the perfect position.
Fascinating stuff for sure. Adrian, thanks very much. Good update. We'll see how that all shakes out. I'm sure there's a lot more discussions to happen around that. And it sounds like it's going to be a really busy year, lots of results. So we'll get you back on here as soon as we can, okay?
Sounds good. Thanks, Steve.
All right, there's Adrian O'Brien, Vice President with the very busy Midnight Sun Mining Corp.
The featured company is a paid client of Proactive Group Holdings, and this recording is disseminated by Proactive on its behalf. It is for informational purposes only and does not constitute investment advice, an offer, or a solicitation to buy or sell any securities. Viewers should conduct their own research and consult a qualified financial advisor before making investment decisions. The views expressed are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect those of Proactive Group Holdings, trading as Proactive Investors, or its affiliates. No responsibility is accepted for any loss arising from reliance on the information presented.